And although most of the Trump family usually puts out a united front behind Donald Trump, another member of that family is now publicly breaking ranks. Fred Trump III, the son of Trump's older brother, Fred Trump Jr., and brother of frequent critic Mary Trump, has now come out in support of Kamala Harris. The endorsement comes as Fred Trump releases a new memoir, which has the title, All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. In the book, Fred takes readers behind the scenes of the family dynamic that he says helped create the former president. And Fred joins us now here on set. Good to see you. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Let's just start simply with this. Why now? Why speak out now?
There are two reasons, and we haven't started now. My wife Lisa and I have been advocating for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our young son, William, has complex disabilities. We've been doing so through the legislative and through the executive branch. We have met during Donald's term with cabinet secretaries and a meeting that culminated in May of 2020 in the Oval Office. So we haven't just started. We waited for the book. We wanted to wait for William to become settled in a new home environment. He doesn't live with us now. He lives in a group home. We wanted him to be settled. But we've been thinking about this for a while.
And tell us more about what Donald Trump has said about your son.
Donald has never met William, ever. In fact, no one in the Trump family other than two of my cousins have met William. So when he said what he did to me, when a fund that had been set up for William's health, for his therapeutic needs, and I just want to clear something up. The reason a fund existed is because Donald orchestrated a plan to take my sister and me out of my grandfather's inheritance, which went back days after William was released after 7 weeks in hospital. Al, you'll remember that in the city. You have to understand that Donald was my trustee. He was my trustee, which meant he was supposed to protect me and my family. He did the exact opposite. So the fund was my money, but I had to ask for it back, which was troubling. So when the fund was running low, I called Donald and I mentioned that. And he said, your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die and move to Florida. Now, I don't know how you can explain that away, the cruelty of that comment. But as you'll read in All in the Family, he had said something very similar in our last Oval Office meeting with a group of advocates. He had called me back into the office when everyone dispersed and said, those people, all those expenses, they should just die. So it's hard to wrap your head around that.
We should note Donald Trump disputes this account. He said that in a statement, I helped him so much, more than anyone else in his life, and this is the thanks I get. Eric Trump, the president's son, took to Twitter X last night, saying it's disappointing that after decades of unwavering love, support, golf memberships, et cetera, that you have decided to cash in his words, less than 100 days. So talk to us about this family dynamic now and respond to what they're saying.
You know, the dynamic started when I was very young, when I was able to grasp it and understand that I am one of the only people that knew Donald in his formative years, through his business career, and during his presidency and after. So I know Donald as well as anybody. My father, his older brother, Freddie, wanted nothing to do with the family business. But my grandfather, who was very tough, wanted him to. My father wanted to be an airline pilot and wound up being an airline pilot in the early 60s. That was quite a feat. But Donald, who was given the path by my father to do what he wanted to do, to run the family business, just demeaned my father for no reason other than his need to feel superior to other people. And that led to issues with my dad, unfortunately. You know, people will say this is like the Succession television show. And I say, no, it really isn't. In Succession, there were 3 siblings that wanted to take over the father's business. My dad wanted no part of it. My dad wanted to be an airline pilot and became that. Again, he gave Donald the path, but Donald crushed him.
Fred, I want to go back to what you were saying about your son and Donald Trump's reaction, because one of the things that strikes me, and as you know, I've known Donald Trump for a while, pro and con relationships, is that the insensitivity that I might have marched on him about in terms of Central Park 5 or something else is one thing, but to be insensitive to his own nephew's condition, and it shows how he feels about people that have situations like what you and your wife are dealing with your son, that he really has no insensitivity toward people that are suffering or find themselves in a different situation, which is scary if you're going to make him president of the United States. Talk about just his lack of humanity and sensitivity.
Well, I was listening to the segment before with Senator Kelly in the immigration policy and how Donald and the new Republicans, the Republican Party, which is not the Republican Party I remember, just everybody is a rapist, everybody is a criminal. The way I answer that question is the caregivers that take care of my son William are from many of those same countries. They care for him every single day of his life. So Donald does not respect people that he deems lesser than him.
You know, Fred, it also is interesting that he doesn't want to be in the presence of people with disabilities. You know, I remember the comments that he made to General Kelly, who was then his chief of staff, that he said nobody wants to see those people. And we were talking about wounded veterans that were going to be on stage, being honored and revered. It is fascinating to me that he would have a nephew that would be severely disabled, that he would never meet him.
Never met him.
And what about Eric? Has Eric met your son?
Eric and Donnie, we invited them to our house many years ago, and they came. And they saw. William is wheelchair bound, needs assistance, everything. He's a wonderful young man.
And I'm sure he's enriched your life.
He is the most courageous and inspirational person I have ever met.
So it's really, and then you look at the evangelical community, and this circles back to you, Rev. I'm pretty sure that Jesus spent a lot of time talking about taking care of the least among us. Right. Can you reconcile in your mind this enthusiasm among evangelical Christians for a man who has advocated killing people, letting them die if they're disabled because he doesn't like the way they look?
I think they have the same end goal in mind, just power and to push their goals. If you don't mind me going back again to Senator Kelly, and I hope this helps answer one of your questions. During the inauguration in 2017, my two older children were with us, and sitting right behind me was Senator McCain. And when the ceremony was over, I brought my kids over and I said, this is a word I don't use very often, kids. Senator McCain is an American hero. And obviously, this is after Donald had said he wasn't a hero, which I think baffles many minds. And the fact that it doesn't disturb a lot of people that he said that goes to your point. It's very, very sad.
And Caddy, not only did during the 2016 campaign did Donald Trump mock John McCain, but he also mocked a New York Times reporter who had a disability. He did so publicly on stage, made fun of him, and drew cheers and laughs from the crowd.
Yeah, and as Claire was saying, there was the reporting that he didn't want wounded veterans or disabled veterans up on stage with him because he didn't think that it was a very good look for his own political campaigns. Fred, I wanted to ask you if you think you visited the White House several times. You voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but you did stay on good terms with your uncle, and you visited the White House several times. The book is titled All in the Family. Do you see this as just a kind of sad breakdown of family relations? Or is it something more than that to you?
The family broke down early in my life when, again, my father was going through his issues. He was then deemed pretty much the loser. My father was supposed to be the golden boy. He really was. My father was an incredibly caring and charismatic guy, but circumstances led to his drinking, and in turn, my sister and I have always been deemed basically the second-class citizens of the family. When Donald or the others will say the Trump family, it doesn't include us. And I just don't get that. So yeah, All in the Family is, well, it's an ode to one of my favorite television shows. Al, you remember. But we're from Queens, so you know, we're tough, and I'm thrilled with my, as someone called it, my nuclear family, my 3 kids and my wife, Lisa.
All right, well, the new book, indeed, titled All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. It's on sale now. Author Fred Trump, thank you for joining us this morning.